With no exaggeration or jokes, mutants are one of the craziest, most insane archetypes that I've ever seen revealed in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Pack. These were revealed by my friend Ruggles a few days ago, which, by the way, I mean, I'm a little bit biased here, but I think Konami's way of revealing many of the biggest cards and new archetypes from Phantom Rage was really cool. I think it gave players something to look forward to every single day, and it was a lot more interesting than people just opening boxes early and people getting a leak that way. Doing it officially was really cool, and I hope to see more collaborations like that in the future. Anyway, this was revealed by Ruggles, and this was an insane reveal because there were 12 new mutant cards that he got to show us, and there's 14 total, so we don't know the last two. Not sure how we'll actually find those out. Maybe Konami will reveal them later on. Maybe we'll just have to wait until we open boxes, but I think we get a pretty good idea of how the deck works with these 12 big cards. And these cards are, I mean, they're crazy. Their effects are crazy. Their artwork is crazy. I'm a huge fan of the mutant cards already, and I wasn't really sure going into them what they would actually do, but this was just, I don't think anyone was expecting this, to say the least. They have so many really interesting interactions, not only with each other, but also other archetypes, and I think that they might be a meta contender. In today's video, we're going to go through the 12 mutant cards that were all revealed, and I'm going to give my first impressions because this archetype is really interesting. The basis for this archetype, like the two key cards, are the two smaller leveled monsters. So you have a level 2 and a level 3. They're both ultra rares, luckily not secret rares, and these cards are very important. And also they're both level 3 or lower psychic monsters, so you can use them with emergency teleport. So this one is Mutant M-5, a level 2 water psychic that says if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add one mutant monster from your deck to your hand, except this card, obviously. You can tribute this card, then banish one card from your hand or face-up field, special summon one monster from your hand or deck based on the banished card. So this might get a little bit complicated. I do have a handy dandy chart that I'll use, but basically you can banish a monster to summon Mutant Beast, a spell to summon Mist, or a trap to summon Arsenal. What's cool about these cards is that they all interact with monsters, spells, and traps in different ways. Mutant ST-46 is nearly identical. There are a few key differences. It is still a psychic water monster. This time it's a level 3 monster, and the only difference in the entire effect here is that instead of adding a mutant monster, it adds a mutant spell or trap. Everything else is the same, so it's not too complicated quite yet. You will definitely want to play 3 copies of both of these cards, as well as the 1 copy of Emergency Teleport, and honestly I wouldn't be surprised if E-Tele went to like 2 or maybe even 3 on a future ban list, just to make the deck even more consistent. The other lower leveled mutant monster is Mutant GB-88. This one is actually different in many ways, so it's a level 4 water this time, so you can't summon it off of E-Tele, and its effect is pretty different from the first 2 monsters. So this thing says during your opponent's main phase, if Mutant Evolution Lab is in your field zone, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned during your opponent's turn, you can tribute this card, then banish one card from your hand or face-up field, special summon one of your level 8 mutant monsters that is banished or in your graveyard. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. That is a hard once per turn. So the first 2 ones are all about special summoning those level 8s from your hand or deck, whereas this one is more about recycling your resources. Now you might notice already, if you haven't read the other cards, that yeah, these 3 cards are all -1s with their tributing effects. However, the first 2 monsters instantly give you a +1 when they're normal or special summoned, and this one, while it does still have that -1 because you lose this card because you have to tribute it and also the card you banish, in general the level 8 monsters are really powerful. Not to mention the big fusion monsters can give you quite a lot of advantage, so for most situations the -1s aren't really that big of a deal. While the spells and traps are very important, I think it's more important right now to look at the 3 level 8 monsters so that you guys can get a better understanding of what you're trying to summon. Beast has a few effects here, so first off, it can't be targeted by your opponent's monster effects. Also, all of these level 8 monsters have a trigger effect when a certain type of card is activated, With Beast, it's a spell, so if your opponent activates a spell, you can banish a card from your hand or side of the field to negate the activation and banish that spell, which is obviously very powerful. And finally, if this card is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target one of your banished mutant trap cards and add it back to your hand. Next up, we have Arsenal, a card that you will special summon with the level 2 or level 3 by banishing a trap card, so this one cannot be targeted by traps, and then also it has a trigger effect. When a monster effect is activated, you can banish a card from your hand or side of the field to target a monster on the field to banish it. Finally, if this card is destroyed, you get to target a banished mutant spell card and add it back to your hand. Finally, we have Mutant Mist, the card that can't be targeted by spells, and when a trap is activated, you can once again banish a card in your hand or on your side of the field to then draw 2 cards. And finally, of course, if this card is destroyed while in your possession, you can target one of your banished mutant monsters and add it back to your hand. So you can see here, these level 8 monsters are quite powerful. All their effects on the field are really good. For example, with Mist, this card is super annoying against decks that have trap cards. I mean, any control matchup, this just gives you more cards to throw into their back row, which is always good against decks like Altergeist or Guru or Frogs, decks that want to get you into a simplified game state so they can just lock you out of your cards. But a card like this gives you more advantage to sort of deal with all of that back row. With a card like the Beast, you can sort of interact with your opponent's spell cards by negating them, and maybe they have like a really important hard once per turn spell card. Well, now that card not only is negated, but also it's banished, which might come up in certain matchups. An Arsenal is pretty much valuable in any matchup. Banishing monsters is really good, and the only activation requirement is that a monster effect is activated, so really easy to use that ability. With all these cards, yes, you have to banish cards on your side of the field or in your hand, but also they flow into your banished mutant cards when they're destroyed, which is really good for long-term card advantage. That brings us to their spells and traps, and then we'll end on the fusion monsters, but I think that Mutant Evolution Lab is very important to look at. Keep in mind here with the level 4 monster, this is a card that you have to control to special summon that one from your hand on your opponent's turn. When this card is activated, you can special summon one of your level 4 or lower mutant monsters from your hand or that is banished. Mutant monsters you control gain 100 attack for each of your banished mutant cards with different names. Once per turn during your main phase, you can place one mutant monster from your hand on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, draw 1 card. You can only activate 1 Mutant Evolution Lab per turn. Here's the thing with this card, it really does encourage you to banish the smaller mutants with the smaller mutant effects. So if you have the level 2 and level 3, you'll really want to use one of them to banish the others so that you can revive it with Mutant Evolution Lab, because obviously special summoning the mutant from your banished pile is a lot better than special summoning it from your hand. With the level 2 and level 3 mutant monsters, they get effects when they're normal or special summoned, as we already looked at. Not to mention the level 3 one can actually search a Mutant Evolution Lab. So in my mind, a very common play would be like normal summoning the level 3 monster, adding Lab to your hand, and then tributing the level 3 monster while banishing the level 2 monster to special summon Mutant Beast right from your deck. Then you could special summon back the level 2 monster, search whatever, maybe even the GB88 for your opponent's turn, and then special summon yet another monster right from your deck. Not to mention that combo also works if you have the level 2 monster and the Evolution Lab, because the level 2 monster can add the level 3 right to your hand. The last effect reminds me of Cosmo Town quite a lot, and this deck in general does sort of remind me of Cosmos. You have these smaller monsters that summon the bigger ones, and you want a card like Evolution Lab to cycle back those bigger mutants so that you can hopefully draw into your starters. Is that last effect as flashy as the first effect? No, but I think it'll boost the consistency of this deck by quite a lot. Right now we know they have 2 ways to summon their fusion monsters, 1 spell and 1 trap. This is Mutant Fusion, a normal spell that says fusion summon 1 mutant fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your hand or field. If your opponent has activated a card or effect this turn, you can use up to 1 monster each from your deck and graveyard as fusion material. You can only activate 1 mutant fusion per turn. So I think this card is very easy to activate with that upgraded effect. Your opponent's always going to use cards and effects on your turn. Maybe mutants become so popular that everyone is playing around Mutant Fusion, but in my mind that probably won't happen, at least not right away. This really is like a Shaddoll Fusion. You know, if your opponent plays into it, you get a huge advantage off of it, and that really is good for a deck like this. Mutant Cry is the other way to summon your fusion monsters. It's a normal trap that says, during the main phase, fusion summon one mutant fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling the fusion materials listed on it into the deck from among your cards on the field in your graveyard and or your face-up banished cards. You can only activate one Mutant Cry per turn. This card is insane. We'll look at the fusion monsters in a second here, but one of them pops a card when it's summoned, which is really good with a trap effect like this. This is a really good way to summon your fusion monsters because you can just sort of shuffle back all of your banished cards, which is not only good because now you have all those cards back in your deck to bring out again or to search again or whatever, but also because it makes this card not a minus in card advantage. I suppose you could use cards on your field if you really need to, but I think in most situations you're trying to use cards that are banished or in your graveyard with Mutant Cry, and for that purpose it's very, very strong. I don't think Mutant Blast is very good, but I'll talk about it anyway. It is an equip spell that says, equip only to a level 8 or higher mutant monster you control. At the start of the damage step, if the equipped monster attacks an opponent's special summon monster, you can banish that opponent's monster, so it turns your card into like a DD Warrior Lady slash like Shaddoll construct. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can banish this card, send the monster this card is equipped to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon one level 8 mutant monster with a different original attribute from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect of Mutant Blast once per turn. So basically it turns all of your level 8 mutants into not only that DD Warrior Lady slash Shaddoll construct, but also into a Lone Fire Blossom, which is okay, I guess. I'm just not sure if you really want to see this card in your opening hand. It doesn't seem consistent enough to actually see play. Finally, and yes, I know this video has been quite long, these cards are very complicated, but we have the two big fusion monsters that you're trying to summon, and obviously the deck is really trying to summon these cards because they have so many ways to do it. They have the very powerful normal spell, they have the very powerful normal trap. Let's see what the payoff is. The first one is Mutant Synthesis, and this is one where it's easier to summon but doesn't have as powerful of an effect. It takes two mutant monsters with different attributes, and it says, if this card is fusion summoned, you can target one card on the field to destroy it. That makes Mutant Cry like a Regeki break that summons a big monster without discarding any cards. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can activate this effect for the rest of this turn. This face-up card is unaffected by the effects of opponent's cards of the same type, monster, spell, or trap, as that card. So if your opponent uses a monster, you can use this to protect it from monsters for the rest of the turn. If this fusion summoned card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can add one of your banished mutant cards to your hand, so it just lets you add whatever you want. And all of these effects are hard once per turns. So this thing isn't like insanely overpowered, but it is pretty easy to make. Keep in mind here, you can make it on your turn to aggressively pop cards your opponent controls, or you can make it on your opponent's turn as an extra layer of interruption. The real boss monster is Mutant Ultimus, and this card is insane. A lot harder to make, but very, very good. It takes 3 level 8 or higher mutant monsters, which could be the main deck ones, it could be the other fusion, it could even be itself if you really wanted to. When a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can banish one mutant card from your hand, graveyard, or face-up field of the same type, monster, spell, or trap, negate the activation. And if you do, banish that card. If this fusion summoned card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can add up to 3 of your banished mutant cards, up to 1 each of monster, spell, and trap, to your hand, and obviously these are all hard once per turn effects. I mean, this thing is crazy powerful, and just based on how good the 2 fusion summoning cards are in this archetype, I really don't think this card is that difficult to summon. Yes, the other fusion will be good as well for popping cards on your opponent's turn, but this card will be very, very strong if you can manage to summon it. Not to mention, if your opponent does manage to destroy this card, you get a ton of advantage. Adding back 3 different cards to your hand is just absolutely crazy, especially in this deck. Overall, I'm incredibly impressed with the design of the artwork for the mutant cards, as well as how unique their effects are. I think this archetype is going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really powerful. beautiful, and I can't wait to see what the last two card reveals are for this archetype. Let me know in the comment section below how you feel about the mutant cards, because I really can't wait to pick them up and build my own mutant deck. I'll see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.